he goes through all these things, and I don't know how many strokes has he had, how many seizures. I know some of them you can not
We
tell.
can't count anymore. We know that the day that he had his massive stroke, he had at least 4 TIAs, and then he threw the clot. And that's when they told me to make phone calls, and that's when I had the medevac.
I would leave on a Thursday and come home on a Saturday or Sunday. I would spend 3 or 4 days with him and 2 or 3 days with the boys. I was torn. I didn't know where I needed to be. I knew I needed to be a mom, but I knew Ken needed me. The only crappy thing about it was visiting hours at the time at San Antonio Polytrauma were 1 hour a day. So I would drive down there to spend an entire week and see him for 1 hour. And then I had the option to go to the Fisher House, which was free. You get 1 room per veteran. And basically, I just researched and cried. But the first week, I would sit outside in the parking lot. As long as you weren't sleeping in the parking lot, you were okay. So I would stay awake and I would open his window and move his chair to the window and park where I could see him, because that was as close as I could get.
Yeah, that's a huge blessing that you did that. I mean, just doing that for them. It's the little things,
I just didn't want him to feel alone.
Exactly.
But while we were there, the hours went up and they came to know me, and the nurses were amazing. I was always told that the physical therapists and the occupational therapy, they were great too, but I think they were great pre-COVID, but post-COVID, they were short-staffed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the nursing was awesome.
That's great.
I didn't worry about him when I went home like I would have at Baylor. I knew he was safe. And I would go down and, the next day I only had an hour with him, but they were kind enough to let me bring in a bundt cake and even light the candle. They said just blow it out really fast. And I brought in these silly party hats and took pictures and balloons, and he had no affect. His personality wasn't there. But I wanted him to know that he made it one more trip around the sun.
God bless you for that.
I did that. He stayed there from February 23rd until April 21st. And I drove down every week.
You were an angel to him. You really were. I mean, yeah, how many times we've talked a lot, over the last couple of years, and I'm just, your love for your husband is very readily apparent. I mean, through action, and it's very admirable. He had the 1 stroke. They thought it was a TIA, ended up being a real stroke. And my understanding is there's been a series of strokes. There's been a series of seizures. Do you have a total count with that? It's just a lot, right?
I have all of them written down. I've never added them up. And by all of them, all of the seizures, I have all of those. The TIAs are only a visual that you can see.
Okay.
Because you can't monitor it on imaging. So his seizures didn't start until June 13th, and that's where I don't know. When we were at Polytrauma, I asked him, we had a family meeting, and I asked him about putting him on anticonvulsants because his stroke was so massive, and I had spoken with so many different neurologists, and they said he needs to be put on anticonvulsants. Some of these were neurologists that I had known personally. And they said, but within the first 6 to 12 months, he's susceptible to having seizures. Take in mind, he still wasn't stabilized mentally. And I'm still advocating at Polytrauma that they, part of his progress is going to be his mental status. And if he's depressed, he's not going to progress. So we went to the family meeting and I asked them to put him on anticonvulsants, and they said no. That can cause liver and kidney failure. And I said, what are we treating though? The stroke or quality over quantity? and they said they still couldn't do it. They gave him stretches to do that I would do with him while I was there, but I only ever had up to 4 hours towards the end. And that was a grace that the nurses gave me. I had to wait until the big people left, and then they said, Coley, you're good. You can stay. I asked, can he get a PTA? He was on constant visual observation because of his impulsivity, and he would just get up thinking he could, do something, and he would fall.
PTA, physical therapy assistant.
I wanted a physical therapy assistant to help him with his physical therapy. They gave him papers of stretches he should do in the bed. Well, one, how do you expect somebody that's had a stroke and has short-term memory loss to remember to do them? Two, how do you expect him to do it when he's got impulsivity issues and he's on constant visual observation? And when he tries to do the stretches, they go in and it's basically a slap on the hand. So they would never give him a day pass to come out of the facility, because there is an option to get day passes so that I could take him to go have lunch. But he had to come back to the facility. I only had 4 hours. They wouldn't give him a PTA because they didn't have the staff. I said, okay, well, what about the person that's watching him, that's literally sitting there on the other side of that glass window, staring at him all day long? Why can't they come in and just be, a side guard and let him do his stretches, remind him to do his stretches? We don't have the staff for that. I said, but they're sitting there. Well, if they have charting to do, that needs to get done. Okay, they had an excuse for everything. So part of our financial stuff and the fact that they wouldn't put him on seizure meds, they wouldn't address his mental health, they wouldn't have a neurologist see him continuously. They said, his visual perception and his executive functioning skills were off the charts. They weren't even within the box that he needed to be in. And they didn't ever know if they would come back. That was why he had speech, because at that point he could speak and he was on a regular diet. I asked a ton of questions, but I was so desperately looking for that miracle, that magic wand. I had a horse that Ken bought me right before he had his stroke. And that was my therapy from working at Children's. I sold the horse, and I had a doctor from up here in the Dallas area drive down to San Antonio to do stem cell treatment. I was finally able to get him out on a day pass. Was the VA, would they have been okay with it? Probably not, because he was undergoing treatment with them. But it wasn't illegal because it was something that Ken consented to. So he did 2 rounds of stem cell treatment, one in San Antonio and one when he came back. But his mental health was never addressed, and his stretching was never done.
So stem cell, the point of stem cell is kind of like regeneration of problematic areas, right? Okay.
So we just did an IV intravenous injection in hopes that they would just go to where they needed to go, because your stem cells go wherever they feel they need to be. A lot of people think that they won't pass the blood-brain barrier, but if they didn't, how would we have stem cells up there? Controversy. I can't answer that question. I'm not God, but somehow we have stem cells up there. And I just wanted him back. So we did the stem cell treatment. He ended up coming home, but because he wasn't stretched, his hip flexors wouldn't work. He had a lot of tone and they were really weak. And when your hip flexors don't work, your knee won't bend. And when your knee won't bend, you don't get dorsiflexion in your foot where it does this. So it was frustrating to come home and he didn't make progress. The entire time he was at polytrauma, he made no progress. And when they discharged us, and the director of that polytrauma at the time told me and Ken that it was best that he come home because they couldn't meet my needs. Because they couldn't meet my needs and my satisfaction, he should go home. And I was really upset. And I said, no, ma'am, that's not how you practice medicine. When you practice medicine, you give an oath to treat them like your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your child. And that's not what they were doing. But I think they didn't like the pushback. They didn't like the fact that I was just sitting there sedentary, following their protocol. I'm researching. But in my mind, we're supposed to be a team. We're supposed to be helping get him better.
Mhm.
I'm not there to fight with them. I'm there to work with them so Ken gets better. So they
He did a hell of a
discharged.
job. He did a hell of a job.
I feel like if I had of, we would have worked better together, but I didn't know where to go. So I went to our local congressman. I addressed an issue with the pool. They have a pool at Polytrauma for TBI patients. And the water therapy is amazing. And it worked great for Kenneth Baylor. And he made great progress. I was told that it was closed due to COVID. Then I was told it was closed because there were ceiling tiles that fell. So I contacted our local congressman and a patient advocate. And we were finally told that it was functioning, but they didn't have a contract to have anybody maintain the chemicals. And I'm like, why can't that be done? Well, that could take a year. Why would the VA, why would the government put so much money into something so expensive, so useful, and not maintain it? And when I approached the program director as to why they could not get a contract, she couldn't answer me. And I said, so go to the person you had the contract with before. Go to the person that built the pool. Call whoever you have to call. She said, we don't know who we need to call. I'm sorry, but that's not a good enough answer for me because there's a paper trail. There's always a paper trail and there's always something to follow. And if you don't have the answer, go to your boss. If they don't, go to their boss. I tried contacting the medical director of the facility. Couldn't get in contact with him. He would not meet with me.
At this point, how many senators have you reached out to? I know that's been, I mean, you know, we got something else and we're kind of working on along those lines. I mean, what I'm trying to show is the progression of the things that you've done trying to get help with this and to shine a light on a problem. 5, okay.
5, including the congressman, Jake Elsey, and 2 of them were out of state.
So I mean, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is you're doing your due diligence and then some, elevating, you know, to everybody you can think of. And those are the things that, I mean, she's done her part here, guys. So anybody who's watching this, she has done her part and probably 10 other people's parts trying to make this better for her husband, you know, look out for her kids. I've been talking to her for a while now. So I'm just blown away by everything you have done successfully. So if you don't mind, you've been talking about a pool that reminded me of your housing situation. You've got some lawsuit stuff with that. Could you talk about some of that? Why did you have to move into a different place? So maybe we start there.
Financially, we could afford the place that we had, but we were on almost 2 acres and I rehomed our 15 chickens. I had 2 of our dogs fostered, the puppies. The older dog I kept at home because that was Ken's dog and that was his therapy dog. I sold the horse. So I downsized, but I couldn't take care of Ken. I knew when I brought him home April 21st, how was I going to keep an eye on him from getting up and mow the lawn? We had a pool outside. How was I going to maintain the pool? I didn't do it. Ken did it. I don't believe that there are jobs for men and jobs for women. I believe that we can all learn to do everything. And you learn as a marriage, it's compromise. So were there times that I had mowed the lawn? Yeah, I could mow the lawn. I'm capable of mowing the lawn, but I wasn't capable of mowing the lawn and keeping Ken in his seat and getting the kids back and forth to school. Because every time we did that, when we came back home, we left April 21st. He started outpatient therapy on the following Monday, April 25th. our routine was I had to have a camera set up. I woke up, got the kids ready, left Ken asleep, made sure he went to the bathroom, made sure he had a drink and he had food in his belly if he was hungry at the time or not. And I had to sit him on the couch with the camera facing him. And my phone is in my hand and I'm driving the kids to school, which wasn't far. Luckily, it was like a mile down the road. And it was literally, guys, the minute we pulled in, backpacks, seatbelts off, I love you. Make good choices. Don't let anybody steal your joy. Have a great day. Mom will see you after school. Rush back home and watch the camera the entire time to be able to talk to him so that if he did stand up or tried, I could say, Ken, I need you to sit down. We did that from April 25th to June 1st. And it was hard. And I couldn't maintain the lawn. I couldn't maintain the pool. And we were becoming behind on our mortgage by then. Once Cowtown had paid out, we weren't going to be able to continue paying it. Then I found a way for us to pay it, but I still couldn't keep Ken in his seat. And it wasn't his fault. So I want to make that clear. He had impulsivity issues. And there's a lot of intimate things that he got us in a lot of financial debt. Again, not his fault. It's part of the brain that was affected. But it was $45,000 worth of debt. And he didn't mean to do it. And to this day, he'll tell you he's sorry. It's just how the cookie crumbled at the time. So while I could afford the house, I couldn't get us out of debt. And I couldn't maintain that house. So I knew eventually we were going to have to move. But June 1st, he became homicidal and suicidal. His mental health was never completely addressed. And again, I went outside of the conventional box. I put him in hyperbaric oxygen treatment. And that was something that I had started at San Antonio, polytrauma. A colonel down there was willing to do it for free, and I could stay in the Fisher house. But because of COVID rules, I would have had to take the kids out of school. They would have had to be with me and wear masks in this dorm type facility and be quiet. How do you tell a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old to be quiet? And anytime you go out of this bedroom, basically, and you go to the community kitchen or community dining room, you have to put a mask on. They couldn't do it. So I decided, you know what? Ken's already got us in so much financial debt. What's 10 more thousand? So I started him in hyperbaric oxygen treatment up here in Dallas. June 1st, I dropped him off at the VA in Dallas. And because I was frustrated with the VA in general, I said, he's your problem. You won't address his mental health. And now he wants to kill himself. Fix it. He came home June 10th, and they had started him on Cymbalta and Abilify. Take in mind, he's susceptible to seizures anyway, within that 6 to 12 month window. But one of the main side effects of Abilify is seizures. So I dropped him off and they kept me updated, and I went up and I visited every day, and they said that, they had to put him on the med surg floor because of his physical status, and he didn't get any physical therapy or occupational therapy. So he had atrophied a lot. So the custom AFO that was fitted for him at polytrauma didn't fit anymore. And his strength was weakened. But he came home and we did our best to navigate. But his therapy basically stopped at that point. So June 10th, he comes home, and June 13th, he has his first grand mal seizure. It lasted about 25 minutes, and he was unconscious for about 8. EMS was called. They were there for most of it. They gave him 2 doses of Versed and a rectal Valium, and that was finally what got him to come to. And they're working on him, but our kids are watching this. I was showering him at the time that he had the seizure. So he ended up on top of me And I don't know if it's a blessing or not, but my kids were there. It sucks that they had to see all of it. But had they not been there and my 9-year-old not been there, I don't know that he would have made it.